Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I still have too much free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Today's ink is by Noodler's Habanero. It's a very orange. It doesn't lean red, really, and it doesn't really lean too much towards yellow. It's a genuine orange. It's a bit darker than their Apache Sunset, and so in that regard, because it's just a little bit darker, I prefer to use it for writing when I'm not just, doing a color show, because it's a little easier to read. Now, here's the chromatography. You see this red at the bottom? It would make you think that it's more water fast than it is. It's really, this is kind of misleading. I thought I was going to see some water resistance. There really isn't much. But anyways, as you can see, there's sort of a red base. Goes up into this orange, and then there's this golden yellow color with this sort of dark gold band at the top. So, here we go. And all the tests were done in this Italix brand Parson's Essential with a Broad Cursive Italic Stub. So it's a fairly broad nib, but it brings out shading exceptionally well. So, starting from the top down in density, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. There you go. There's that shading. Fantastic. And really helpful because orange can be a very light ink, and so it can be a little hard to read unless you get this good shading to bring it down and make it a bit darker. 9 seconds to dry, which I was very impressed by because this is a very hydrophobic paper. It's very dense, and that was a broad italic stub, so I was impressed with that. As you can see, really not that water fast. Yeah, I mean, it's still there in a couple places, but mostly it's just gone. Yeah. No bleed, feather, spread, so that's good. Great dry time, but there's no sheen. Some of these really saturated inks have sheen, but this one doesn't have it, but I don't feel like that's a point against it even, just because look at that great shading. And it's such a vibrant orange. I really do like this ink. Next is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter, where, I mean, look at the word brown. Great shading. And lazy, beautiful. 7 seconds to dry, which again, this is a broad stub. This is very hydrophobic ink. It has I think a ceramic powder coating that goes on in the pressing process. It's a fantastic dry time. It is a very vibrant ink. There's no bleed, feather, or spread. But again, like I said, water test, it's gone. I mean, that's just gone. I mean, half of each letter is pretty much unreadable. It's out of there. But no bleed, feather, spread. Very well behaved in that regard. Next is Tomoe River Paper, where 9 seconds to dry, so it's right on par with Clairefontaine, but I mean, for Tomoe River, 9 seconds and a broad stub, really not bad. I mean, here in the scribble, you can see how dark it can get. Just great. I love this ink. Here in Parsons, you can see all that difference in shading. Just gorgeous. So great dry time, still very vibrant, no bleed, feather, spread. Again, really not that water fast. It's yeah, it's pretty gone, but really not bad. I do love this ink. Next is 20-pound Copier Paper, where, look at that. Look at that shading. I mean, look at the word habanero. That's great. I mean, you have the lightness down here at the bottom of the end, and then at the top, just that richness. It's fantastic. And this is Copier Paper. And 7 seconds to dry, so comparatively that is a bit long. I mean, usually this paper will take half as long to dry as it will on the denser papers. But here it was right on par with Rhodia, which is a bit odd, but not so bad. Great shading, great vibrancy. I mean, look at how bold that orange is. That's great. Here, the water test was actually fairly okay. That's pretty readable. It's pretty there, but Yeah, it's not all there, but it's there. No bleed feather spread. Some show through, but not a great deal. Now, here's where things get a little sad. Mead Notebook Paper. Took 3 seconds to dry, which is on the long side of average for this paper. And there's feathering, and there's bleed. And I said, you know, smaller nib might do well, but I'm not so sure. It's pretty much wherever there's enough ink, it just starts to get really woolly and bleedy and spready and not fantastic. And I feel like it's not as vibrant as it is on some of the other papers. I mean, if you just look at this orange and then look at this orange, it's really different. It's, yeah, so, and the water test was just hideous. I mean, the paper started to come apart, as you can see, but still, it was pretty gone in the first place. And for such a light ink, for the bleed through to be this bad, that's not great. And lastly, we have Moleskine notebook paper, where it took 7 seconds to dry, which again, comparatively, is pretty long. You still get some shading, but if you look closely, in those areas where there's shading, that's where you get some feathering, like in the T and the I. So, yeah, not perfect, and the water test was pretty bad. That's mostly gone. You have these weird random spots where it stayed, but it's mostly gone. Bleed through, it's there in spots, but, you know, again, this is a broad stub, so maybe it might do a bit better on a smaller nib. Some bleed through in the water test, but, yeah, it's not quite as vibrant. It's still pretty bright, but it's not quite as bright. Here, yeah, see, it's a little lighter, it's a little flattened, but not as much as it was on the Mead. So, there you go. There's Noodler's Habanero. Sorry for my camera freaking out today. I don't know what's going on. But it's a beautiful orange ink. It shades well. It's very well behaved. It's great in a broad stub. I had great dry times. Not that water fast, but God, it's got great vibrancy, great shading. It's a bit darker than Apache Sunset, so it's a little more comfortable to read. So it's a favorite of mine, as you might be able to tell, because there's a good deal of this gone. And it pretty much lives in this pen. So for your consideration from the Triple N Network, Noodler's Habanero. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And so long from the Triple N Network. Bye.